Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Gabriel Allen Cummings.
And I'm Sonika Garcia, and this is Breaking the Code,
a podcast series by the Havas Medical Anthropology team. We're here to take the BS out of behavioral science by illuminating the why behind the what of behaviors, rituals, and symbols that people take for granted. We hope to arm you, our listeners, with the tools you need to make sense of behavioral science and help you apply to your work as communication extraordinaires.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So as some of you might know, February is Rare Disease Month. So for this year's Rare Disease episode, we did one last year in February as well. We're going to talk about rare disease from a different perspective, the caregiver perspective. Rare disease doesn't just touch the person with the diagnosis. It touches the person and the people who are caring for them, parents, partners, siblings, friends, and loved ones who oftentimes have to navigate uncertainty, advocate relentlessly, and hold hope and fear in their hearts at the same time. Such a difficult situation to be in. And that's why today we're really spotlighting Raregivers. Raregivers is a global network dedicated to the emotional support and wellness of caregivers, patients, and professionals in the rare, chronic, and complex disease communities. Raregivers delivers sustainable psychological training, transformative retreats, peer-to-peer support, amongst so many other resources to tens and thousands of families all over the world. And their mission is really to educate and empower millions. Their work isn't just about relief. It's about giving voice and visibility to the people who make caring and caregiving possible. And we feel so grateful that key members of the organization are here with us today to share a bit more with our listeners. So you guys are in for such an amazing episode, and we're so grateful for the Raregivers team to be here. I'm going to kick it over to Gabe to introduce our panelists.
Yeah, and just to echo, Sonika, super excited to have this one. We have plenty of episodes of Breaking the Code, diving into patient ACP, but really haven't really spent a lot of time or a full episode talking about the caregiver. And so really taking the time to do that is really exciting. You're in for a treat, and I think we are too. So I'll go through the panel, just read everybody's quick intro, say hello, and then we'll dive right in. Starting with Cristol Barrett O'Loughlin. Cristol is the founder and CEO of Raregivers, a global support network and wellness platform for mothers and family caregivers. Shaped by the loss of three brothers to a rare genetic disease, her work and her TED Talk, Caring for the Caregivers, centers on resilience, healing, and the urgent need to care. Cristol, welcome to Breaking the Code. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much. This is just a dream come true, and thrilled to be here.
It's great to have you too, and thank you for taking the time. We're also joined by Afshan, Rizvi, Hussain. I should say we're joined again by Afshan is a repeat guest on the show. For those who don't know Afshan, she is a award-winning business executive and a rare disease subject matter expert at Havas. She serves as the global head of rare disease, working to shape how industry, advocacy, and communities intersect. For more than 20 years, she has led complex rare disease launches and built cross-discipline systems that influence not just brands, but market behavior. As a former rare disease caregiver herself and now a Raregivers board member, she focuses on closing the gap between the lived experience and institutional decision-making. Afshan, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back. You guys know you're one of my favorite podcasts, so really excited to talk about caregivers today.
Love to hear it and love to have you back. Lastly, we are joined by Binaka Norris. Binaka is a social strategist serving rare disease communities with authentic, people-first content. Through rich social insights coupled with creative ingenuity, she is focused on meeting communities where they are with the information and validation they need most. Binaka also completed the Raregivers training, and we'll be talking about that during the podcast as well. So Binaka, welcome to Breaking the Code. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. It's such a fun thing to talk about and so important. So thanks for having me here.
Totally. And I think, as we were talking about before, let's just get into it. And so, Cristol, this is really talking about Raregivers, and I want to give you a space at the really top of the episode to share your story. How did Raregivers come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Raregivers has, as an organization, been around for 25 years, literally half my life. We've been building to this moment, but I was born into this role, the youngest of 5 children. 3 of my 4 older brothers had a rare genetic disease called Hunter syndrome, and they passed away in the 1980s. They were 12, 18, and 19 years old when they passed away. And you can imagine that the whole family was wrapped up in the care for my brothers. My oldest brother, Richard Adam, is still alive. And so we were sibling caregivers. Literally, I was youngest, he was the oldest. And my parents went through a very difficult experience. Ultimately, it broke them up. They divorced after 11 years of facing these caregiving challenges, and that chronic stress that comes into the family because of these care experiences can often result in broken relationships. I will say, if you stay till the end of this podcast, I will give you a Hollywood ending like you could never believe. So there's a little teaser for you. But the impetus for the organization was lived experience and really understanding that people hide, that we don't share our home experiences always in our public life. So no one in my high school knew that I was going to funerals at 12, 14, and 15 years old. I didn't talk about it. Certainly didn't talk about the feelings, but didn't talk about those experiences. All through college at UCLA, didn't talk about the fact that I had lost 3 brothers. It wasn't until well into kind of young adulthood when I was thinking about I may want to have a family someday, and I started looking into what my genetics background was, that I attended a family conference, the National MPS Society Family Conference, and felt empowered because I was with other families and other caregivers and other patients. And by the way, these are odd words, like we don't call ourselves patients, we don't call ourselves caregivers, and we don't call ourselves healthcare professionals. We are just people, right? Living these really complex experiences. But it wasn't until I came into community that I saw, okay, wait, I can be vulnerable. I can be open. And what I observed over the years was there were not enough opportunities for the person that's holding that emotional space to express their own feelings about holding that emotional space. So the caregiver is holding not only the feelings about their experience living with this medical complexity, but they're also holding the feelings for their loved one, whether that's a child or a partner. They're holding the feelings for maybe other family members, could be siblings, but it could also be grandparents or aunts or uncles. And they're holding the emotional space for the healthcare teams too, right? Because now they're the expert going into these medical environments. They're explaining things. And when they're explaining it often to doctors and nurses and counselors and genetic counselors, there's a reactive moment because we're human beings. And this is a very tragic reality in rare. There are no cures in our rare disease community. And so the focus on feelings and emotions is where Raregivers excels. It's what our mission is, and why we're just absolutely thrilled to be partnered with the creative geniuses and so many others at Havas to really just bring this story into the world and give people permission to have the feelings that they have, regardless of what role they play in the family.
What an amazing story. Thank you. Thank you for taking us through that and sharing that with us, Crystal. I love what you said about, people don't think of themselves with these titles, and we're just humans and we're just living the human experience. But thinking about the word caregiver and the significance of Raregiver, it's first of all, I never heard that before the organization. It makes total sense, right? Like Raregiver, but what was the significance of the name? How did you come up with it? I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. So, so a couple things there. So, I have a background in advertising and marketing. That's what I majored in at UCLA. So whenever we come up with a new term, we test it. It's like, you're sort of testing conceptually. And the actual word Raregiver was originally a slip of a tongue. It was someone mashing together the words rare and caregiver. And they said Raregiver, I mean rare caregiver. And I was like, no. Say that again.
Yeah.
It was literally a rare mother named Erin Dubrow who shared that, that moment. And when I really started thinking about it, and I was just sleeping on it, I woke up, I actually wrote a whole poem, which I will send to you the next morning, wrote a whole poem about what the mission was for Raregivers and what this actually could do to change hearts in the world and open up space for people to be authentic with their emotions. So that was the first moment. The second moment was really thinking about, this isn't caregiving in the standard way that people might think about caregiving. This isn't just parenting. This isn't just caring for a loved one as they go through a procedure and then they recover. This is radical caregiving. This is skilled nursing at home, right? This is ongoing, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, decade to decade. We have Raregivers in our community in their 80s that have been caring for their children who are now in their 60s, right? So these can be lifelong experiences, but they're not just, I don't want to say, it's just radical. It's just so radical is just a very clear word, especially when you translate it around the world, so it's radical caregiving or rare giving was kind of the second exploration of that term. The third was around this idea of rare. The reality of rare disease as a definition of a community is that the definitions don't match up around the world. So depending on where you are on the planet, there's a different definition of what is considered a rare or ultra rare disease, right? So we wanted to almost pull back from rare and go, okay, wait, what is the experience? The experience is chronic stress. The experience is medically induced stress. The experience is this radical caregiving that's going on at home. And then when you start breaking down the word rare and care, rare doesn't, if you're not in the rare disease community, you don't necessarily hear rare in the context of defining a community or defining a disease set. You hear rare as in whoa, this is a very unique experience, right? This is rare in the sense of really special circumstances, really different and unique circumstances. So those kind of three elements, and then testing, and then we went through a communications experience at USC Annenberg School of Communications using AI to explore different terms. And at that time, we were running as Raregivers by Angel Aid. Angel Aid was our original name of our organization 25 years ago when we started. And we realized that Raregivers was it. And so we trademarked it, we own it, that's what it is, but it stands for a lot of different things. And thanks for letting me explain all that.
No, I love that. I was that there has to be a significant story behind that name. So thank you. And when you were talking about, what fueled you to start the organization, the purpose, the mission. You spoke about validation and giving them, giving the caregiver, the Raregiver, the place to feel what they want to feel and what they need to feel, and just kind of giving them the space to do that. And I think a lot of times in the narrative, we hear, caregiving is love and it's duty and it's resilience and it's all of these really powerful emotions and this big job. And while all of those things are true, when you're living that reality every day, it's labor intensive, as you're explaining. I'm sure it takes so much out of your soul. And so that shape, the way that narrative is, and the fact that sometimes that just doesn't feel like their reality, how does that impact what Raregivers are allowed to ask for, giving them the space to even feel like is it okay for me to feel this way? Can I actually say it out loud? Am I going to be judged? Am I, like, what's that dissonance that's created? What's how does that shape what they're allowed to feel and admit and really vocalize?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Isn't that interesting what they're allowed to feel? Like feelings don't work like that. Feelings are feelings. There's no judgment on the feelings that you have, and there's no control over the feelings you have. You can control your reaction to those feelings, but the feelings come up. They're in your mind. They're formed by your thoughts. They've reverbed through your whole body. They live in your heart, and so we have what's called an emotional journey map to help people understand what some of these complex feelings are that they may have. But at the top of this Raregivers emotional journey map says this phrase: cycles of hope and grief. Okay, cycles of hope and grief. This is the yin and the yang of the human experience, right? It's not one or the other. It's always and both. That is the truth. We're complex. What makes us human is our ability to empathize, to recognize a set of feelings in ourselves and witness those feelings in another person, right? And hopefully find a meeting of hearts so that there's some sort of like recognition of those feelings. But Brene Brown says it best, right? The difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathy, you see something, you witness it, you witness a set of feelings either in yourself or in another person, and then you go straight to the fix. Well, have you tried this? Well, what about this resource? And did you do that? And, well, at least you don't have this, right? You start comparing, and you start and so that is not relief. Relief comes in someone seeing what you're feeling or you recognizing in yourself what you're feeling and then just sitting with that. So Brene talks about it's sitting in that deep, dark hole with that person, just holding their hand. I'm here. I see you. I hear you. I'm with you, right? Taking a few deep breaths with the knowledge, the intimacy of that understanding. I see that feeling in myself, or I see that feeling in another person. And so what we try to do often in human nature, and this is our brain kicking in, not our heart, our brain wants to progress people from negative emotions to positive emotions. We've got to fix, so we have a scale. We ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, how supported do you feel in this moment right now, today, at the moment, right? And 1 is, I don't feel supported at all. In fact, I might even be having suicidal thoughts, right? I'm taking this all the way to the extreme of crisis. And on the other end of the scale, the 10 is, you know what? I feel pretty great. I'm feeling really resourced. I've come to some level of acceptance of what's happening in my world, at least in this moment. And I feel pretty good about it, right? And so someone that's in a wellness mindset, you can offer interventions, experiential moments like yoga and meditation and conversation, but you're not going to offer yoga to someone that's having suicidal thoughts, right? So when we endeavored to launch a global emotional support system within Raregivers, we have to be everywhere all the time at any moment and meet people where they are from crisis to wellness. And so that's why we say it's hope and it's grief and it's everything and it's witnessing, not fixing. It's not progressing from 1 to 10. It's just saying, I see where you are. We're here. We do have a set of resources if you want to explore them, but it's not a push. It's a holding. It's an emotional witnessing. It's a holding experience.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we are going to get into the emotional journey map because I think that's a really important part of the conversation. So more to come on that. We're going to ask you in a bit. But All right, Gabe, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, the emotional journey map, there's definitely a lot of questions and thoughts kind of ruminating in my mind. The concept of hope and grief are things that, we kind of dive into when we get into the emotions of people who are living with rare disease is something that we brought up a lot when we were having that conversation about sickle cell disease a few episodes ago. I really kind of want to take a different perspective here. Binaka, ask you about your experience getting the certification, being in a space with caregivers. A lot of what Crystal was saying about like being in that cycle of hope and grief, and also something that they were talking about too, Sonika and Crystal just there, was the stigma that sometimes caregivers feel about expressing their emotions and the quote unquote being allowed to feel. So I'll start really broadly, Binaka, and you could take it however, what sticks out to you. But how was the certification experience for you? What did you get out of it?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think before going, I was prepared to be really an odd one out. I am not a rare giver myself. I have not seen anyone really intimately be a rare giver. I know one person from my hometown that has a rare disease, and I know his mom. And I know my mom who's been a caregiver, and that's basically that, right? So my caregiving picture is intimate, but it's not full blown. And working in rare disease, we do focus on how does the person behind the diagnosis feel? What do they need? And there's this absence of the team around them, right? So going in, I was thinking, oh no, what am I going to have to offer? And upon getting there, I think what stuck out to me the most is inherently every guest, every person at the training is welcoming, right? They know care like the back of their hand. They don't make you feel like an outsider. They don't make you feel like, what are you doing here? It's welcome to the flock that I already shepherd, right? I'm just assuming that you have the best intentions and you're here and we're learning this together. So I think that off the bat, it's just leveling, right? Where I'm in this space, I'm new, and I'm feeling supported by people that need support the most. It just is, it feels very classic. And as we dive into the emotional journey map, and even just being there and talking with caregivers, they have no other option but to care deeply and wholeheartedly. There's no other option but jumping in feet first and saying, I care. I care to the greatest extent that someone possibly could, because my heart just might be 3 sizes bigger than yours. It just is that way, right? And it was just incredible to see. And the certification is taking what the emotional journey map and what Raregivers has outlined and being able to mobilize that in your own communities. It's not just sitting with me and I think, great, thank you so much, Crystal. That was awesome. I can't wait to sit with this and ruminate on it. It's not. It's very actionable, right? I feel empowered. While I was doing the training, I thought, wow, I could probably stand here as someone who truly is empathetic, but has never walked a mile in the rest of the audience's shoes. I haven't. But still feel capable enough to express a type of empathy I've never had to learn before. It's very exciting. And I think it's a lower barrier to entry than you're thinking. It just plays on human truths, right? I don't necessarily know what it's like to be like at every single stage of the Raregiver journey, but I do know what it's like to feel like you've lost a sense of self. I know what it's like to be trapped in grieving a life you expected to have in any regard. I can relate to those things, and I feel like just the holding of the space, I don't know what you're dealing with every day. I can't even help you navigate some of the wider institutional barriers that you're facing. I don't even know if I could give you encouragement, but I can be here and I can remember that feeling for myself. I can imagine the feeling for you, and I can hold your hand and say, this is great, right? It's tough, but I'm here. I'm doing my best. You're doing your best, and this is what's going on. And it was just super exciting. It's a real growth skill. And I was just really fortunate to be around so many wise women and men who have experiences that I don't have, but are willing to share, comfortable, and want to do the work to feel better, right? You have to be in a position of time where you're feeling like you're ready to grow just to get to the point of empowerment. And you have to feel like you have some autonomy. It's hard. Every day is consumed by, this medically complex life. How do I even find it in myself to say, I need this? I need to understand what my strengths are. I'm looking at all my values. What are they? Where's my time for that? And being able to see these groups of people take the time, recognize that they are valuable and worth spending time on, and just getting to witness that, it was great.
I just want to start by saying I really appreciate you starting your story with the fact that you came in feeling insecure, that growth and you being able to see it from your perspective. I really appreciate you sharing it from the way that you did. I think one thing with the caregivers, and it goes back to this idea of like being allowed to feel, recognizing the time to, take time to do self-care. I just want to kind of underline that a bit. In your experience being in that space, and we will talk about the space too, because I think that there's an interesting thing there too. Was it hard for them? Like, what was it like for them to kind of come to that recognition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have never witnessed someone be so resistant to the idea of self-love or self-care. In fact, like the name itself, the nomenclature of self-care, I don't like that. It feels selfish. If I'm not doing something for someone else, what am I doing? Right? And I can relate to this in a way, but this is on a dramatic scale because your entire life becomes, what do I have to give to someone else? It's not what do I have to give to myself. It's not what do I have to take time for, because the self inherently feels selfish. I think in general, our culture of caregiving and how we view them as ultimate selfless, almost sacrificial lambs of constant giving makes anything that is called self-care or self-love hard and selfish and a negative term. I don't want to engage with this because I don't find it valuable for who I am and what my role is as a person. It's very hard to step out of caregiver and step into me, is what I'm seeing. And it was, I actually called my mom. I was like, I've never felt so like downtrodden before. I haven't. It's one thing to say it, and it's one thing to watch a woman start crying because she doesn't believe that self-love is possible for her. It's hard. Like it is something that is a culture failure on everyone, that we don't allow the people who do the hardest work that many of us will never have to undergo, to let them feel the numerous amount of emotions and not push them to be a little selfish. It's not selfish to give yourself a couple deep breaths every day, or literally breathing. It was like, can you sit here for 5 minutes and breathe? You're getting antsy. What am I doing for someone else? Do you need water? I've never been asked so many times in my life if I ever needed water before. Everyone's like, do you need water? I want to do something. I want to be useful. And it's a reminder that self-love is not saying, okay, just caring about me. It's caring about who you are inherently and the value you have just by showing up every day. Your value is intrinsic and not related to what you do, even though what you do is so powerful. This reminder, it feels very like, okay, I'm at the worst stage of my life. I just received something from a doctor I never wanted to receive. I just saw my kid break down, or, there's so many obstacles because the people they're relying on don't know how to do it for them, right? They don't know how to encourage them to take time for yourself. We live in a culture where no one wants to take time for themselves at all, right? Keep pushing, keep working, keep going, ignore your physical health, your mental health, keep it moving. And for this exact group of people, there's nothing that's greater, right? This is the greatest push of selflessness at a point where just talking about yourself, what do you like? What do you do? What did you like before? Becomes this massive hurdle. It's this value, I don't know, disparity. I see all these women as inherently valuable, all these men, all these caregivers as inherently incredible and valuable because of who they are, removing the caregiving. And yet, for themselves, they need this reminder. It's the greatest gap I'm seeing probably in my career. So it was intense because what can I do? All I can do again is what I've been trained in. sitting there reminding you have strength. You're strong, not just because you're a caregiver, but because you're here, you're doing this. You got in a plane and came here. You got up and drank some water, and you looked at the glass and thought, nice, I'm excited to be here. That's totally enough. It's not your fault our culture has failed what it means to love yourself. So that's what I learned. It's just incredible. They're really incredible. I love all of the people that I met, and they deserve self-love in a way that I can't even explain.
I really appreciate that answer. And I'll say when you first...
I got to jump in.
Go ahead, Crystal. Go ahead, Crystal.
Okay, I'm hearing so many things that you're saying, Binaka, and it's beautiful to hear you talk about the training in like a whole fresh set of eyes, right? Because we've been building this methodology for decades now, literally, and I just want to kind of ground it in some really important points. So one is caregivers. The number one thing they say is, "I don't have time. I don't have time for self-care," right? I have huge responsibilities. There's no time for self-care. So first and foremost, we talk about sips of self-care, just taking micro moments of every day back for yourself, right? So it might be while the coffee's brewing, you're taking a few deep breaths. It might be when you wake up in the morning, you're actually journaling out just a few notes about maybe some thoughts or feelings that came up for you. You might just take a few minutes of a walk out in nature, right? So these are not rocket science. These are the ancient arts of the things that we know that we need to be doing for ourselves. And in the methodology, we talk about the 10 essential tips for sustainable caregiving, right? And there are things that you would already expect: sleep, nutrition, connecting with others, expressing your emotion, getting help, literally like skilled counseling help if you need it, right? And so I just wanted to mention those things because when we do training, and training is a funky word, training, I think, you're listening to this podcast, you've been trained. Your mind has now been opened up to, wait a second, there's something different that we could be doing, that I could be doing for myself, right? That I could take this moment back for myself. So in this case, you're taking this podcast moments back for yourself. So training comes from being witnessed at the highest level. It's like a giant funnel. You see somewhere in a social post, you see, and I know Afshan, you're going to talk about this, but you see yourself witnessed through imagery. And then you decide, okay, I'm going to join a support group. Okay, wait, I'm going to go to the website. Okay, wait, I'm going to download the journey map. Wait, I'm going to go a little deeper. I'm going to actually attend a wellness retreat, either through Raregivers or through one of our partners like We Are Brave Together or others that, have retreats all over the world. We don't need to do it all in our organization. We're doing this through 200 coalition partners around the world, right? And so you go even deeper. But let's say you decide you want to get certified in the Raregivers methodology, and that's what Binaka participated. She was part of the first cohort ever on the planet to get certified in our methodology. Like, how exciting is that, right? So you and your fab 12 people, right, got certified. And in doing that, it's not just talk training. It's not us saying this is what this methodology is, and we're going to talk you through the 6 stages, and we're going to, and here's how you teach it. It's not, and it's experiential learning. It's experiential training. And so we brought in a sound bath therapist to take the cohort through a sound bath, using, the beautiful bowls and the reverb of just feeling relief. How are you supposed to teach relief or even recognize it in yourself if you've never gone through that experience before, right? And then, equine therapy and working with horses and the beauty of sitting down and having a meal prepared for you and receiving it. Actually receiving that loving organic food and then sharing it in a relaxed way with other people. Like, this is not the norm in our frenetic lives, right? Okay, so I just wanted to ground the heart of what you were saying, Binaka, in the reality of what we're trying to demonstrate here, because there's no one way to learn these moments. They can be learned, very deeply through actual certification training, but they can be learned very lightly through a scroll and witnessing yourself in a beautifully crafted social post.
Can I just add, because now I want to talk about why that matters for the work that we do on a regular basis for the communities that we serve. Because Crystal, you mentioned earlier the difference between sympathy and empathy. That's incredibly important, right? We're not just trying to move people out of a negative emotion into a positive emotion. It's a natural thing, like it's a natural response, but it's not really productive for the audience. But even within the realm of empathy, there's cognitive empathy and then there's affective empathy. That's what I think is the difference that the work Raregivers is doing. That's the difference it makes. And that's why I feel I want to amplify that work, because we're moving beyond just an awareness and we're giving people tangible actions. Mm-hmm. It might be a sound bath. It might be equine therapy. It might just be the emotional witnessing, which I think is grossly underrated. And I think about my own experience as a Raregiver, how different that would have been for me if I had seen an emotional journey that says, like, everybody knows that you move from denial to acceptance, right? Everybody knows those traditional journeys. There's no journey for a caregiver. At least I didn't know there was one. So even that idea of emotional witnessing and seeing it pen to paper on what that path is like, that would have changed my understanding of what I was going through myself. And I think it would have allowed me to be a better person, offering emotional witnessing for other folks who I see in my life going through the same thing. So I just wanted to clarify, there is these things feel soft, but they actually are very tangible and they're very meaningful. And they, at the end of the day, they influence health outcomes.
I just wanted to come in and highlight, we've mentioned the phrase emotional witnessing a few times. Crystal, I just want to toss to you quickly. Could you speak to emotional witnessing as a term? What does that phrase mean?
Yeah, well, okay. So emotions, feelings, heart-led, wellness, well-being, these are not often line items on a funding dashboard, right? So when we're talking about, we're going to build a company, we're going to build an organization, we're going to build a movement around helping people recognize their emotions, we've got to be pretty deliberate about the process of recognizing those emotions. And so everything that we did in the beginning was listening exercises and data driven. So we did a global survey out to families around the world, not just caregivers, but because caregivers don't call themselves caregivers. So if you try to reach out to people, and say, hey, we just want to talk to the caregivers, it's like, no, it's also self-care, emotional well-being within the patient community, as well as these like echoes. So we know every quote unquote patient, there's 350 million patients in the category of rare disease, on average through our survey, we know has 3 family caregivers on average, could be many more, but on average 3 family carers, and then on average 5 healthcare professionals. Okay, so do the math on that. You get to 2.8 billion people really quickly. And that's not even including the teachers that are wrapped up in this experience, or the neighbors that are bringing meals, when a loved one ends up in the ER and people are mobilizing, right? So this is very much a societal challenge. And we know in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17. The third is a fundamental human right to good health and well-being. It doesn't say just good health, right? It's not just about lifespan or health span. It's about your emotional experience as you're living your life, right? So getting into harmony, getting into balance, or at least recognizing for that moment where you are in that harmony or that balance cycle. Okay, so why does that matter? Because then we're doing the survey, and then we did a meta study. So the meta study is, what is all the pieces of published research on the emotional impact on families going through this experience, right? So we identified 287 pieces of published research. We were like early users of AI. It was like working with our partnership with Microsoft, employee volunteers. We do hackathons with them every year, and they were helping us surface so much of this research. So we identified 287 pieces of published research on the emotional impact of the disease experience in these families. Does that seem like a lot? That's a pittance. If you do, Google it, whatever. Emotional impact on military and veterans caregiver, emotional impact on senior care, Alzheimer's, dementia, emotional impact on, breast cancer or cancer care, right? There's tens of thousands of pieces of published research. So that was telling for us. That helped us realize, wait a second, this is a blind spot. This is not recognized in the community that we need emotional support in the first place. In the community of rare disease, the default is to the fix, to finding the treatments and cures, right? And the money flow is to the fix. $242 billion going towards biotech and research and science to cure these diseases. Here's the number that woke me up every day. If you have 350 million people, 10,000 rare genetic diseases, only 5% have treatments, okay? And there are 0 cures. What's the outcome? Like and I call this empathy math, right? So this is not a hard, 0 times anything is 0, right? So if the outcome is 0, it's a global mental health crisis. Everybody in this community is wrapped up in the emotional side of this, and not very many people are talking about it. So that's kind of maybe the background, the genesis of emotional witnessing. Emotional witnessing, we wanted to see what is the emotional impact on these families. We saw it in the data, and in the data, we pulled out 4 typical stages that families or individuals or caregivers will go through, okay, that they'll live through. And these are not linear stages, but there were 4. Okay, the last 2 stages, because there are 6 in our journey map, the last 2 stages, I like territories better because it's more like chutes and ladders. Your feelings don't go in order. It never works like that, right? You could be in a diagnostic phase, end up in the ER, and now you're worried about end of life. Or you could be grieving what you thought life was going to look like as a mom or a dad or a family caregiver. And the reality of these responsibilities and the great detailed burden that you're carrying and you carry it lovingly because you love your loved one, right? So I'm not saying it's a burden that like the community freaks out at that word. They don't call it a burden. It's not, I'm happy to carry this burden, right? Because you're sort of going into that uncomfortable territory of don't tell me what my feelings are, right? So in any case, when you go through these experiences, what you realize is end of life and finding meaning, the last 2 stages, they weren't in the published research anywhere. Why is that? Because the patient had passed away. So when the patient passes away, the relationship with the healthcare system ends. The healthcare system moves on. The reverb on the family is forever. So it was the families that said, wait, your journey map is incomplete. You're missing stages. Added in the end of life stage. And then it was much, much later that we added in this notion of finding meaning behind this experience, because that's what drives so many in the community to start foundations, to start raising money, to pour their heart and soul into trying to fix what's happening with themselves or with their loved one. And we just sit alongside all those efforts and we say, while you're doing your fix work, let's do some emotional support, some emotional witnessing so that you can sustain what you're doing on the fix side, right? So it's a yes and, it's a both.
Man, for everyone who's listening, I mean, we do journey mapping in our roles all the time, but talk about the most thorough research methodology, right? It's about the co-create, the way that you really nail a journey map where the person who's viewing it feels validated and also that it's relevant. And I'm looking at something that feels like it's true to how I feel, is that co-creation. And I love what you said, Crystal, of like, it's the meta-analysis, it's gathering the secondary research, but then it's making sure to create with the community that's represented in this map. And I think and you would never have come to those last two very critical journey moments of like, this journey isn't complete. You need these other two moments to really properly showcase the valid journey. If you weren't actually talking to the individuals who this journey was representing, their experience. So I love that. I thank you so much for sharing. And for everyone who's listening, I mean, please go and check out this journey map. It's on the Raregivers website. It's awesome. It's also beautifully illustrated. So just a shout out there. I love the research methodology, and we can, we talk about that all the time on this podcast. So, okay. Well, with that said, thank you, Crystal, for sharing that. I want to quickly move on to, the Raregivers campaign. So, Afshan, I would love if you could speak on the Raregivers PSA launching for Rare Disease Day. What's the goal of the campaign? And just kind of some background on that.
Yes, thank you for asking. Our goal, anybody who's in the industry knows about the creative brief. So what was really important is the briefing that we gave to this team after speaking to Crystal and then having Catherine Waters, who's an amazing strategist on our team, sort of lead the charge. We wanted a universal experience because being a caregiver, a care partner, that looks different, but it's a very relatable sort of universal experience. It looks different for everyone, but there's so many people who can feel that connection to what it's like to care for someone else and not sort of give yourself permission to be vulnerable about it, right? We've culturally coded, Binaka was talking about this earlier, the caregiver experience has been culturally coded to be about the quiet strength. You have to be selfless, you have to be resilient, and anytime that a caregiver or partner feels vulnerable, they feel like it's a failure. And that's a failure on our society, not on them as individuals, right? So what we wanted to make sure was clear is that vulnerability is not weakness. It's information. It tells us when support resources are needed, and often are not available to these folks who are backbones. So our briefing for this PSA was about normalizing human vulnerability. That's a very universal concept, right? Anyone can understand the idea of vulnerability not feeling okay. The whole idea, it's okay to not be okay, right, was our mantra around this campaign. But for us as industry participants, it's also something that we want to make clear that it's not just about feelings and emotions and sentiment. It's how that shapes healthcare, the healthcare system, right? Around the patients and in general, the communities that we're supporting. So the PSA is intentionally simple, and it's about being human. We're not trying to dramatize rare disease. There's been plenty of campaigns and messages that do that, the individual diseases. What we really want to do is shine a light on this hidden experience, this sort of silent experience. It's always been present, but very rarely acknowledged. It's the emotional labor behind care. Mm-hmm. So we want people to see caregivers not just as background characters. What do the kids say? The NPCs? That's the term, right? The NPC.
You're correct. It's NPC.
No, thank you. They're not. That's not what a caregiver is. They are central to a health ecosystem. So for us as industry representatives, folks that service these communities, it is critical for us to understand where those breaking points are and where we could be offering better support. So again, the creative brief was about normalizing human vulnerability and shifting the narrative about caregivers, care partners, and complex, rare, and chronic diseases, moving away from hero to human.
Wow. I love that. Yeah, I think sometimes, I mean, in various categories, but very much so in the rare space, it's this added, I don't know, it's like added pressure almost of like having to kind of fit into a certain narrative. And so again, just everything that the PSA, Raregivers in general, just the organization, it's very much understanding what the rare givers actually feel and actually need and how they actually see themselves. And human is really the key word in all of this. It's just humanizing this narrative of what they're experiencing. And then just as far as stigma, right? That's a word that we commonly hear in this space. Could you speak to the rare team's ambition of making stigma rare, and how do you feel like this work does that?
Yeah, so we have a platform called Rare Next, and our belief is, as Havas Health, like we have the resources and the reach and the proximity to community that allows us to shape what rare disease experience can look like in the future. So what happens in Rare Next starts with us. We have the opportunity to shape that. So that's where the platform came from. And this year, we really wanted to focus on stigma. Our team out of London ran some quant studies, some surveys, and 95%, I hope I'm quoting the right stat, but 95, maybe 96% of people surveyed said they experienced stigma. We thought, how is that possible? That number is incredibly high. We weren't anticipating that. Sure, we expected a significant response, but like in the high 90s, and that's not okay. And if we're truly going to serve communities and we do want to shape the future, we need to talk about the things that are affecting those communities the most. There's significant impact. So when we looked at what are the types of stigma experiences that rare communities or caregivers and care partners go through. And again, it's patients and caregivers that experience this. But for the purpose of the PSA, we were focusing on the stigma that affects care partners. And it affects them in really subtle ways that, again, they're not allowed to talk about. It's the isolation. It's misunderstanding their role, their experience. It's the self-blame. Imagine if there's a genetic disorder, how parents are feeling when they're caring for that. They're not allowed to talk about it. They're not allowed to talk about family planning, right? It's a very taboo thing. There's shame around needing help. You're not allowed to be upset. There was a quote that Catherine had shared with us that our care partner had, or it was a parent, and a grandparent said to the parent when they were expressing exhaustion, said, "Oh, but you do it because it's worth it because you love them so much." And the parent said, "I felt so alone in that moment. Like, I'm not allowed to say to my parent that I'm tired. Of course I love them so much. Of course I would never change anything about the way I am serving in their life. But I'm tired. It's a normal thing. Why we are programmed. It goes back to what Crystal was saying before. Like we have sympathy, and we're forcing people to move out of negative emotions into positive emotions. But that means we're dismissing their stigma rather than preventing or addressing it. So that's why Make Stigma Rare became our 2026 mantra for Rare Disease Day. And I hope people will take a look at the thought leadership. There's a white paper that we're publishing about the role of stigma for both patients and caregivers, and it'll include all of the survey data in there for folks to take a look at. But that's why elevating the caregiver voice and really expanding the way that we think about who deserves empathy, that became so important. Why is there stigma around needing help? Conceptually, it sounds so silly, but that's the reality of the experience if you are a caregiver. And I want to be clear, this is not just about moms. It's not just about dads. There's spouses. There are siblings. Imagine you are a younger sibling to someone with a rare disease that requires a little bit more love, support, and help. And imagine as a younger sibling, you are not allowed to say, I don't feel like I'm getting the attention I want from my parents. Mm-hmm. What an isolating experience, especially as a child, right? And that same child will be the first one to run up and protect and support and give love to their older sibling, right? So it's about
create an organization. I'm thinking about this,
right? 100%. So when we normalize the complexity of those emotions, that's how we reduce the stigma around it. We all know that empathy comes from exposure. When you give people exposure to those experiences, that's how you start to normalize it, and that's how you can start to reduce stigma. So that's one of the reasons we made this a priority focus for this year. And again, everything we do, we want it to be data-centric and tangible. So we're showing people the vast impact of stigma and how it's impacting the health ecosystem, health outcomes, and overall experience within health infrastructure.
I have a question. So in all of the research that was done, was there anything that the Raregivers stated on, like, not stigma coming, but like feeling pressure that came from the family member, the loved one who they were actually caregiving for? Like, almost like, I don't want to appear shaken or stressed, or because this person who I love so much might think something of it. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Almost it coming from the person. Yeah, Crystal. I hope I'm articulating myself correctly. I don't, but yeah.
There may be Afsha, there may be data in the surveys and work that you did as well. But I can speak to this because we've spent 1.5 million hours talking and engaging with the community about these feelings over the past 25 years. It's been my extraordinary honor to get the chance to synthesize this, in from my heart and in my mind as well. And what I would say about that is that it's a very difficult reality for these families. It's half the patient population is children, okay? And a third of those children won't live past their 5th birthday. So when you think about that in the context of being a parent or a grandparent or a sibling or anybody in the family, this is a pressure cooker of an experience, right? This is the way I think about it is like a tea kettle that's screaming on the back burner, right? Because it's just, the heat's been left on too high, and it's just like screaming, hissing, and people are running through the house to turn the tea kettle off, right? Trying to just take some of the heat and the stress out of this experience, because everything feels life or death, and it is life or death, right? And so how do you create a system of support, of emotional witnessing in the context of people? They talk about your brain, like getting your prefrontal cortex just getting flipped, right? You're in crisis mode. Often you're in crisis mode at the hospital. So now not only are you in a real physical crisis, you're also in an emotional crisis at the same time. Everybody's trying to do the best they can from a triage standpoint for that loved one, that child, that patient. But at the same time, there's just this like energy that's just getting thrust around in the ER room. We watch it on The Pit. We watch it on, it's like we've witnessed these things in entertainment or we've witnessed them firsthand. But it's like, how do we calm things down a little bit? It's a micro moment. It's a breath. It's a visual sign. We talk about sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. These are the ways that we actually bring a micro moment in to calm things down. So it might be a visual cue. Oh, I remember from my bracelet, I'm not alone because I'm part of this community and my bracelet represents this community, right? Or I've trained it into myself to close my eyes, take 3 deep breaths, right? To just calm things down so that I can be there. So I know I'm kind of like bouncing around a little bit, but just having spent so much time, you've got to build a system of support that is useful in wellness and crisis. And you've got to talk to people in their native language, because when your lid is flipped and you are emoting and talking about your feelings, you're talking in your native tongue. Okay. It's not all in English. We know this, right? We all work in global companies. And so finding the words, finding the translation capabilities, and then finding it in a system that can be mobile first, so it's accessible anywhere, so that the community is accessible everywhere, so the learning is accessible everywhere, and the connection, can happen at any time, day or night, because, time goes out the window, location goes out the window, language goes out the window, all of this, right? And so that's what I think is happening here with this campaign, is that it's that universal truth. It's the pulling the lens back to the moon and looking down on planet Earth and going, what does this community need? And so I don't know if I answered your question. I might have gone on a little bit of like whoa, what journey are we on here?
Question, but no, listen, it's.
Sonika, I do think that's a really important question, because unfortunately in this community, guilt begets guilt.
Right.
So imagine why a caregiver does not feel comfortable saying I'm tired in front of the person that they're caring for.
Right.
They don't want that person to feel guilty.
Exactly.
Imagine why the person being cared for doesn't want to say, I feel guilty that you have to take care of me, because then it starts this terrible cycle back and forth. And that's where some of the burden of stigma comes for both parties. These are people who love each other so deeply, so completely. And in trying to protect each other, they're actually creating this cycle of ongoing mental heaviness, right? And then just this weight that they're keeping on themselves. When if we could normalize having those conversations and saying, it's okay that you both feel this way, talk about it, or talk to someone. If you don't feel comfortable talking to each other, have someone else you can talk to about it. But you don't have to carry that weight.
Yeah.
Because that's what, and again, I keep coming back to health outcomes. We all know that mental health impacts overall health. And like you said before, Cristol, well-being. So if we can get these folks to talk to someone, both the patients and caregivers, it alleviates some of that burden of stigma, and it helps create better, more positive outcomes for them in the end.
Yeah.
Grounding in a couple of statistics here, 80% of caregivers feel depressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. 80%, that's what our data shows, and it's been validated again and again. So over 80%. And then if that's the feeling, then guess what happens? 50% miss a doctor's appointment, come off active treatment, or choose not to enroll in a clinical trial. So there are hardcore outcomes, health outcomes, not just emotional outcomes for the family. The decisions that are getting made are being made by those family caregivers. And if we continue to ignore that, it's eroding the underpinnings of what we're trying to do on the research and science, which is find more treatments and cures, right? So there's real impact here. And I do think that that's the next phase of data that we need to pull, is the impact financially on the system of health in ignoring the emotional well-being, because it's intuitive, it's common sense, that we can't ignore it, but I think we need to ground it in the numbers, because it's not a recognized need in our community.
Yeah. I do want to say the treatments and the cures matter. We care so much about clinical research, but we know it takes a long time. So while we're working on that, we want to also be working on this parallel path to give the folks who are patiently awaiting those treatments and those cures, so they feel supported.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to say I really appreciate like even the direction that this conversation has gone, because it actually checks off a lot of the questions that we were going to ask here at the end of the podcast. I just wanted to come back and say, like, this idea, and Binaka brought it up earlier, this idea of human truth, being able to see the lived experience of other people through emotional witnessing, even though I don't fully I don't fully feel it. And Afshan, you brought up the good point with the caveat of like, it could be younger siblings too, because this whole time I was trying to think and relate to it. How do I understand it? And I was thinking about my mom, and how much she has to do and worry about. None of us have a rare disease, but still the burden of it. And also I just think that it's so interesting and also tragic, this way the stigma works, where it's, people that love each other, as you were saying, Afshan, kind of, at odds and don't want to hurt someone. And so I hurt myself instead. I accept the emotional burden of not opening up and not sharing and not being emotionally witnessed in this way that would help me and also maybe help the other person too. And just maintaining open communication and everything like that. I think that as we get to the end of this episode, we'd really like to turn it over to the guests here to say, like, what would you like us to take away? Is there something in the conversation you'd like to underline? Is there something you missed? Something you wish we spoke about more? Let's go around. I'll let, who wants to start?
Can I start? Because I feel like I neglected to share a very important piece of our PSA story. You mentioned the idea of the human truth, these sort of hidden, unspoken burdens. It is the platform of our PSA. It's called The Rare Truth, and it is launching next week. We're having our soft launch. So I hope that people will engage with the content and be part of this movement to normalize vulnerability and to be emotional witnesses for those who are carrying that silent burden. So we can hear their rare truth and we can share their rare truth.
Binaka, you're next.
I think so. I'll let you take it home. But I would say, just as a takeaway, there's nothing wrong with learning how to be more empathetic. I think that's what this training and this experience has taught me. Like, I think if you don't feel immediately related to, you will. There's no one loses when you learn how to be more empathetic and more caring and more aware of what other people are dealing with. And I'm so grateful again to be part of this experience. And I think anyone can benefit from understanding what someone else is going through and how to go ahead and walk through that with them. It's a great skill. No one should be left alone or left in the dark or left with this stigma that they have to tackle, hand by hand. If we all have our hands in, that stigma goes down a lot more, right? So I think if you're unsure or you don't feel like you're in the right place or you don't feel like you're the perfect candidate, everyone is the perfect candidate to learn how to care, right? You might not be a caregiver. You might know a caregiver. You might not. You can care. Everyone can care. So yeah, Crystal, I'll pass it to you to take us home, but that's what I would say is a takeaway for me.
Oh my goodness. Well, we've been spending a lot of time talking about truth and universal truth and human truth and the rare truth, which I'm just thrilled with that platform. I think it's going to open up conversation around the world. Again, multilingual opportunities culturally. I call it the global rollout, right? It's a global rollout with local activations. There's so much that can happen with this. But here's my truth. Here's my feeling. And it's on the board in the back. When life gets medical, people get emotional. People get emotional, and we have to talk about our feelings first so that we can do all the other things downstream. And that's what the Raregivers emotional journey map is about. It's what all of these sponsors and partners have done to help us develop a tool set or a spark. We're not going to solve this challenge for the world exclusively, right? If this gives you an idea of how to bring more emotional well-being into your family unit, to yourself, and into your community, then you do it your way. Take it and run with it. You can come to raregivers.global and you can explore our point of view, but it's too big for one organization. And that's why it's a global public service announcement instead of a brand campaign. We're not doing a Raregivers brand campaign. We're informing the world about why we need to pay attention to emotions. And I promised you, if you got to the end of this podcast, I would give you the Hollywood ending story. So this is how we're going to kind of like wrap up, I think, this notion of emotional witnessing. So, my parents, Richard and Phyllis, they met in high school. My father was captain of the football team, and my mother was head drill team leader. Okay. And so they just game on, they just fell fast in love. They got married at 19. They had 5 kids in 8 years. Can you imagine? One after the other. And it wasn't until my mother was 8 months pregnant with her 4th son that they realized that David and Jared were not developing the same way as my older brother, Richard, and that it was this genetic disease, Hunter syndrome, that was causing this. And then Randy was born and he was confirmed to have Hunter. So 3 of the 4 boys, what are the odds of that, right? And the feelings that were going around between my parents, who were such young parents, didn't have the skill set anyway to try to talk about their feelings. You talk about blame, you talk about guilt, you talk about shame, you talk about every emotion you can imagine, worry, hope, faith, denial. Every emotion that could happen was happening in the family. And then I came along, I was a bit of a mistake. They determined, oh, wait, we have this amniocentesis test. Okay, it's a girl. And you're okay. You can have her, right? So that's how I came in. But the stress of the caregiving, my parents got divorced 11 years into their marriage. They each remarried 2 more times. Okay, divorced again, 2nd time around. Divorce again, 3rd time around. They widowed within a year of each other, the same year that our daughter was born. Now, I'm a carrier. So my mother's a carrier, I'm a carrier, and my daughter's a carrier. 3 generations living with these very harsh realities. And what happens? My parents get back together. So they were apart for 35 years, learning all the skills about how to process their emotions of what they were going through. And then they get back together and they're rehashing things from 35 years before, right? But then they work through it. They find the grace. They find the forgiveness. They talk about the feelings. They explore these really uncomfortable territories that are all outlined in the journey map. And then they remarry 60 years after the first time. So 60 years later, they found a way forward with all of this terribly tragic circumstance. And I just think that's the most beautiful example. And I can't believe it's in my family, but it is a true story. It's not a Hallmark script. It's the real deal. And, God bless my father. He just passed away recently. And we just had all these beautiful full circle moments. And that's the power of the human spirit. And that is why we do this work, is to just change the human condition and make it better. And I'm just so grateful to you and to Havas and all of our partners for allowing us to do that.
You triggered a thought, Crystal, because it's a podcast. I would love to leave a message for listeners, for industry listeners, and then also for caregivers. And then if you guys think it fits, then I would love to include that. And if not, no worries. But I would love for members of industry who are listening to walk away with a shift in their perspective, because caregivers care partners are not on the periphery of care. They're part of the backbone. They are part of the infrastructure and should be considered as such when we're thinking about how to support healthcare ecosystems. And if we do believe in better health outcomes, if we do believe in better systems, we have to design those systems with those caregivers in mind, not as an afterthought, but as key stakeholders. And then on a human level, for care partners and caregivers who are listening, I hope that this work, this conversation, makes you feel seen. You are not failing if this work is hard. We've failed you. This work is hard because it's really complex. And the complexity of your situation deserves support. You deserve support. And it is our mission to bring it to you.
So beautifully said. Yes. Thank you all so much. This was a conversation that I know Gabe and I obviously enjoyed being a part of, but moved us and changed us and in just our work in so many ways. I know the listeners are going to feel the same way. Thank you, and let us know how we can, at least through this platform, we'll talk about what we can link, getting people to actually be able to click on resources. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was so great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, from Sonika and I. Like, this has been a conversation we've been looking forward to since Afshan reached out. Being able to talk about and see caregivers as people and bringing just more humanity and dignity to all health experiences is something that we really champion and we really feel passionate about. So yeah, thank you for your work and your vulnerability. Go ahead.
No, but one last thing I want to say, I think that we have these conversations, and obviously we're, the three of you are experts in the rare disease space, and we have these conversations for Rare Disease Month, but so much of the learning is just applicable to all categories, right? Yes. So I think, Afshan, as you open, please keep the suggestions and the content, this is the conversation I think everyone can learn from, and let's not make it a yearly thing, but find ways to have it, if we feel that there is something that needs to be talked about, allow our listeners to apply it to their work. But there are learnings, to take away in every category in the work that we do. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
I'll call you.
Yes, please do. Thank you, Cristol and Binaka, so much for the time. And you both have a great weekend. All three of you have a great weekend. And just stay safe of the snow and dirt.
Breaking the Code is a podcast created by Havas' medical anthropology team. Hosted by Sonika Garcia and Gabriel Allen Cummings. Produced by Tiffany Tang. And inspired by all of you. Thank you for listening and for your continued support. If you enjoy these episodes, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a rating, subscribe, and send us a message to our mailbox at medicalanthropology@havas.com. Until next time.